But what exactly did you bring to this marriage?
The champagne glass shattered. The ballroom gasped. They mocked the poor woman in the simple black dress until she opened her mouth and spoke 5 languages. What happened next destroyed careers and changed lives forever. The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the Grand Imperial Ballroom as 300 of New York's elite sipped champagne and traded whispers. This was the annual Blackwell Foundation Gala, the event where fortunes were made, reputations were built, and social hierarchies were reinforced with surgical precision. Florence Blackwell stood at the edge of the gathering, her fingers wrapped around a champagne flute she hadn't asked for. The simple black dress she wore, elegant but unremarkable, bought from a department store rather than a designer boutique, marked her as different, out of place, wrong. Did you see what she's wearing? A woman's voice carried across the marble floor, deliberately loud enough to be heard. I wouldn't be caught dead in something so plain. Florence's husband, Richard Blackwell, squeezed her hand gently. At 45, he was Manhattan's most eligible bachelor until 3 months ago when he did the unthinkable. He married a woman nobody had ever heard of, no Instagram following, no family connections to old money, no pedigree that mattered in rooms like this. Just Florence, a bookstore employee from Brooklyn who wore the same black flats every day and carried paperbacks in her purse. "You okay?" Richard whispered, his gray eyes searching her face with concern. "I'm fine," Florence replied, though her heart hammered against her ribs. She had known this night would be difficult. Richard had warned her that his world was cruel, that these people were sharks who could smell vulnerability from across a ballroom. But she had come anyway, because she loved him, and because she had a plan. The whispers had started the moment they announced their engagement 6 months ago. Every gossip blog, every society page, every business magazine had the same question. Why would Richard Blackwell, heir to a billion-dollar empire, philanthropist, power broker, marry someone so utterly ordinary? The headlines had been brutal. Billionaire's midlife crisis. Richard Blackwell marries nobody. From rags to riches, Brooklyn bookworm lands Manhattan's most eligible bachelor. Gold digger or true love. The mystery of Florence John. Richard's mother hadn't attended the wedding. His business partner sent expensive gifts with hollow congratulations. His social circle had quietly distanced themselves, waiting to see if this embarrassing phase would pass. But it hadn't passed. 3 months later, Richard was more in love than ever, and tonight was Florence's official debut into his world. "Richard, darling." A tall woman materialized beside them. Her red lips stretched into a smile that didn't reach her cold blue eyes. Victoria Lane, old money, older prejudices, and the unofficial queen of Manhattan's social elite. "I didn't realize you were bringing a guest." "This is my wife, Florence," Richard said firmly, his jaw tightening. Victoria's gaze traveled over Florence like she was examining a stain on expensive upholstery. "Oh, of course. How lovely." The pause was deliberate, calculated. "You must be so proud, dear. Landing a man like Richard. It's like winning the lottery, isn't it?" Florence met her eyes steadily. "Something like that." Victoria's laugh was sharp as breaking glass. "Well, enjoy it while it lasts, darling. These fairy tales usually have expiration dates." She glided away, her designer heels clicking against a marble like a countdown. Richard's face flushed with anger. "I'm sorry. She's..." "Exactly what I expected," Florence interrupted gently. "Don't apologize for them. Richard, it wastes energy." The evening descended into a carefully orchestrated torture. At dinner, Florence found herself seated at the main table, a position of honor that felt more like being displayed in a zoo. Across from them sat Gregory Hamilton, a real estate tycoon whose net worth was exceeded only by his arrogance, and his wife Barbara, who wore her diamonds like armor. Senator Paul Davis sat to Florence's left, his smile practiced and empty. Next to him was his assistant, a young woman who looked as uncomfortable as Florence felt. "So, Florence," Barbara began, dabbing her lips with a linen napkin that probably cost more than Florence's entire outfit. "What is it that you do?" "I work at a bookstore," Florence said simply. The table went quiet. Barbara blinked rapidly, as if trying to process this information. "Oh, how quaint. It's honest work," Florence replied. "Of course it is," Barbara said, her voice dripping with condescension disguised as sweetness. "I just meant, well, it must be quite an adjustment, going from that to all of this." She gestured vaguely at the ballroom. The chandeliers, the orchestra, the wealth that hung in the air like expensive perfume. "It's different," Florence admitted. Gregory leaned forward, his eyes sharp with malice. "But tell me, Florence, what exactly did you bring to this marriage?" The question landed like a slap. "I mean, Richard is a billionaire. He could have anyone. So what made you so special?" The table held its collective breath. Even the senator looked uncomfortable. Richard's knuckles went white as he gripped his fork. "Gregory, that's enough," Richard said, his voice low and dangerous. But Florence put her hand on his arm, stopping him. She looked directly at Gregory, her dark eyes steady and unflinching. I brought myself. That was enough for him. Gregory smirked. How romantic. Barbara tittered. Well, I suppose love is blind, as they say. The table erupted in polite laughter, the kind that draws blood while maintaining plausible deniability. Florence felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she didn't look away. She just smiled and took a sip of water, because she knew something they didn't. Something that would change everything in exactly 47 minutes. The meal continued with passive-aggressive commentary, disguised as small talk. Every story Florence shared about her life was met with barely concealed mockery. Her childhood in a small Brooklyn apartment. Her mother who worked 3 jobs. Her education, or lack thereof, from public schools and public libraries. You didn't go to college? Barbara asked, as if Florence had just confessed to a crime. I couldn't afford it, Florence said simply, but I educated myself. Victoria, who had moved their table between courses, laughed. Oh, honey, that's not the same thing. There's education, and then there's education, if you know what I mean. I know exactly what you mean, Florence replied, her voice calm. You mean there's a kind of education you buy with family money, and the kind you earn through actual work. The smile froze on Victoria's face. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Richard squeezed Florence's hand under the table, a silent show of support. But she could feel his tension, his barely restrained fury at watching his wife be humiliated by people he had once called friends. As the dinner plates were cleared, Florence excused herself to the restroom. She needed a moment alone, a moment to breathe and prepare for what was coming. In the marble bathroom, she stared at her reflection. The woman looking back at her was calm, composed, beautiful in her simplicity. Florence had spent her entire life being underestimated, being overlooked, being told she wasn't enough. Tonight, that would change. She checked her watch. 32 minutes until Richard's speech. 32 minutes until the world discovered who Florence Blackwell really was. She smoothed her simple black dress, took a deep breath, and walked back into the ballroom. The sharks were still circling, their smiles sharp and their eyes hungry. But Florence wasn't prey anymore. She was about to show them exactly what a woman who had taught herself 5 languages could do when she stopped being polite and started being honest. The real gala was about to begin. And these people, these cruel, shallow, judgmental people, were about to learn that class had nothing to do with money and everything to do with character. Richard was waiting for her at their table, his eyes full of love and concern. You sure you want to stay? He whispered. We can leave right now. I'll take you anywhere you want. Florence kissed his cheek. I'm not going anywhere, she said. In fact, I'm just getting started. Across the room, Victoria whispered something to Gregory, and they both laughed while looking in Florence's direction. Barbara raised her champagne glass in a mock toast. They had no idea what was coming, but in 28 minutes, they would. The moment arrived with the clinking of a knife against crystal. Richard stood at the podium, the spotlight transforming him into the billionaire philanthropist the world expected, commanding, articulate, born to lead. Thank you all for being here tonight, he began, his voice carrying effortlessly across the ballroom. The Blackwell Foundation has always been about creating opportunities, about opening doors that society keeps locked for too many people. Florence watched from her seat as heads nodded in approval. These people loved charity when it was abstract, when it happened far away from their own carefully guarded social circles. This year, Richard continued, we're launching our most ambitious initiative yet, a global literacy program that will bring books and education to children in 12 different countries. We'll be building libraries, training teachers, and creating sustainable reading programs in communities that have been systematically denied access to knowledge. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Barbara leaned toward Gregory and whispered something that made him chuckle. And I'm proud to say, Richard's voice grew warmer, that this program was designed by someone who understands the transformative power of words better than anyone I've ever met. Someone who proves that genius doesn't require expensive schools or family connections. Someone who reminds me every day that true education comes from hunger, the hunger to learn, to grow, to understand the world beyond your own small corner of it. Florence's heart began to race. My wife, Florence. The room went silent, not the comfortable silence of anticipation, but the shocked silence of disbelief. Richard smiled at her, his eyes full of love and pride. Florence, would you like to say a few words? This wasn't part of the plan they discussed. Florence felt every eye in the ballroom turn toward her. 300 wealthy, powerful people waiting for her fail, to confirm their assumptions that she was nothing more than a pretty face who'd gotten lucky. Her legs trembled as she stood. The walk to the podium felt like walking through water, each step requiring conscious effort. She reached the microphone, gripped the sides of the wooden lectern, and took a breath. Thank you, Richard, she said, her voice softer than his but clear. I know many of you are surprised to see me here. I know I don't look like I belong. Victoria's lips curled into a satisfied smile. This was going exactly as she'd hoped. Public humiliation. I'm not from your world, Florence continued, her voice gaining strength. I didn't grow up with money or connections or prestigious schools. I grew up in a 3-room apartment in Brooklyn with my mother, who worked as a housekeeper, a waitress, and a night shift security guard. Sometimes all 3 in the same day, just to keep us fed and housed. The room was completely silent now. Real silence. Listening silence. She couldn't afford to send me to college. Hell, some months she couldn't afford to keep the electricity on. But she taught me something more valuable than any degree. Florence paused, meeting eyes around the room. She taught me that knowledge is free if you're willing to work for it. Senator Davis leaned forward slightly, his political instincts sensing a moment. I spent my childhood in public libraries, Florence said, her voice growing passionate. I taught myself French from old textbooks I found in donation bins. Italian from cooking shows my neighbor's TV played through thin walls. German from free online courses I accessed at the library. Spanish from conversations with the families in my building. Mandarin from YouTube videos I watched on a borrowed laptop. Barbara's champagne glass had stopped halfway to her lips. Not because I wanted to impress anyone, Florence continued. Not because I dreamed of marrying rich or attending galas like this, but because I wanted to understand the world. I wanted to connect with people. I wanted to read Dante in Italian, Goethe in German, Cervantes in Spanish. I wanted to hear the music of languages, to understand how different cultures think and dream and love. She gripped the podium tighter, her knuckles pale. And that's what this literacy program is about. Giving kids like me a chance. Kids who don't have trust funds or family connections. Kids whose parents work 3 jobs and still can't make ends meet. Kids who just need a book and a dream, and someone to tell them they're enough. The applause began, tentative at first, then building. But Florence wasn't finished. I know some of you think I married Richard for his money. Her voice cut through the applause like a knife. I know you call me a gold digger, a social climber, a charity case. And honestly, she paused, letting the moment breathe. I don't care what you think. Victoria's smile vanished. Because I know who I am. I know what I bring to this marriage. Not money. God knows I don't have that. Not status or connections, or a name that opens doors. But I bring love. I bring respect. I bring a partnership built on something real, something that doesn't show up on a balance sheet or a social registry. She stepped back from a microphone. The applause was thunderous now. Genuine, surprised, almost embarrassed applause from people realizing they'd misjudged badly. As Florence walked back to her seat, she saw the shock on their faces, the shame, the dawning realization that they had underestimated someone remarkable. But the night wasn't over. The real fireworks were about to begin. The networking hour after dinner was where Manhattan's elite conducted their real business. Deals worth millions were negotiated over champagne. Reputations were built or destroyed with a well-placed word. And tonight, Florence was about to demonstrate exactly how wrong they'd been about her. Victoria cornered her near the champagne fountain. Her red lips twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. That was quite a speech, dear. Very inspiring. Her voice dripped with condescension. But let's be honest. You can give all the speeches you want. You'll never be one of us. Florence met her gaze steadily. You're absolutely right. Victoria blinked. Excuse me? I said you're right. I'll never be like you. Florence's voice was calm, almost gentle. I'll never look down on people just because they have less money. I'll never treat someone like garbage because they didn't grow up in a mansion. And I'll never forget where I came from or the people who helped me get here. Victoria's face flushed red. How dare you? Excusez-moi, Madame Lane. A voice interrupted in rapid, frustrated French. J'ai essayé de vous parler toute la soirée, mais vous semblez trop occupé à bavarder. It was Pierre Beaumont, the French ambassador to the United States. He'd been trying to get Victoria's attention all evening, but she'd been too busy gossiping to notice. Now he stood before them, clearly irritated, speaking in rapid French that Victoria couldn't understand. Victoria stared blankly. I don't speak. The ambassador sighed and turned to Florence, switching to French. Madame Blackwell, pourriez-vous m'aider? J'ai besoin de discuter du programme d'échange culturel avec quelqu'un qui comprenne réellement l'importance de l'éducation. Florence's face lit up. Bien sûr, monsieur l'ambassadeur. Ce serait un plaisir. She turned to Victoria, speaking perfect French. Si vous voulez bien nous excuser, Madame Lane. She led the ambassador across the room, leaving Victoria standing alone, her mouth open in shock. And that was just the beginning. Over the next hour, the ballroom watched in stunned silence as Florence moved from conversation to conversation, switching languages as effortlessly as changing channels. She spoke Italian with the Italian trade minister, discussing Petrarch sonnets and modern economic policy with equal fluency. She conversed in Spanish with the Spanish consul, making him laugh with a joke about Don Quixote that only worked in the original language. She debated German philosophy with a group of European investors, quoting Nietzsche from memory. She closed potential partnership with a Chinese tech CEO in flawless Mandarin. Her tones perfect, her cultural references spot on. Each time, the room got quieter. Conversation stopped. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips, because they couldn't believe what they were seeing. This woman, this nobody from Brooklyn who worked in a bookstore, was fluent in 5 languages. Not tourist phrase book fluent. Actually, genuinely, perfectly fluent. Gregory Hamilton approached Richard, his face pale. Richard, I had no idea. Your wife is extraordinary. Richard's smile was cold. I know. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why did you let us treat her like what, Gregory? Richard interrupted, his voice ice. Like she was beneath you, like she didn't deserve basic human respect. He took a step closer. I wanted to see who my real friends were. I wanted to see who would be kind to Florence, even when they thought she was just a bookstore clerk. And now I know exactly who failed that test. Gregory's $50 million real estate deal with Blackwell Industries was canceled the next morning. Barbara Hamilton tried to approach Florence, her face flushed with shame. Florence, dear, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were so educated, so accomplished. Florence cut her off gently. If you had known, so you only treat people with respect if they're educated or accomplished. What about kindness simply, because we're all human beings? What about basic dignity? Barbara had no answer. By the end of the evening, the whispers had changed completely. Did you hear her speak Mandarin? It was flawless. I heard she taught herself 5 languages from library books. Richard didn't marry down, he married up. As the gala ended and guests filtered out into Manhattan night, Florence stood on the balcony with Richard, overlooking the glittering city. You were incredible tonight, he whispered, pulling her close. I was just being myself. I know, that's why you were incredible. She looked up at him. Did you really cancel Gregory's deal? I did, and I'll cancel every deal with every person who disrespected you. They need to learn that you're not just my wife, you're my partner, my equal, and if they can't see that, they don't deserve to do business with me. Florence smiled. They'll call you crazy. Let them, Richard said. I'd rather be crazy and happy than miserable and rich. They stood in comfortable silence, holding each other as the city hummed below. And Florence realized something profound. She had spent her entire life being underestimated, being told she was enough. But tonight, she had proven them all wrong. Not by changing who she was, but by being exactly who she had always been, a woman who refused to let other people's limitations define her possibilities. The story would spread, the videos would go viral, the headlines would change. And somewhere in Brooklyn, young girls like she had once been would see that you don't need permission to be extraordinary. You just need courage. The next morning, Florence woke to her phone exploding with notifications. She reached for it groggily, squinting at the screen as Richard stirred beside her. 147 text messages, 89 missed calls, 1,247 new Twitter followers. Richard, she whispered, shaking him gently. Something's happened. He sat up immediately, his CEO instinct alert. What's wrong? Florence showed him her phone. The first headline made them both freeze. The quiet power of Florence Blackwell. How a Brooklyn bookworm humiliated Manhattan's elite in 5 languages. Below it, another. Richard Blackwell's secret weapon. Meet the self-taught genius who designed his global literacy program. And another. From bookstore to boardroom. Florence Blackwell proves class has nothing to do with money, but it was a video that had truly gone viral. Someone had recorded Florence's speech and her subsequent conversations in multiple languages. The footage had been shared 47,000 times overnight. The hashtag Florence Blackwell was trending worldwide. Richard pulled her close. How do you feel? Terrified, Florence admitted. What if? No, he interrupted gently. No, what ifs? You were magnificent last night. The world just got to see what I've known all along, that you're extraordinary. The phone rang. It was Richard's mother, Catherine Blackwell, the woman who had refused to attend their wedding. Florence's heart sank, but Richard answered on speaker. Mother? Richard? Catherine's voice was formal, careful. Is Florence there? I'm here, Florence said quietly. A pause. Then, I owe you an apology, a significant one. Catherine's voice cracked slightly. I watched the videos from last night. I read the articles, and I realized something shameful about myself. Florence held her breath. I judged you, Catherine continued. I judged you based on your bank account, your background, your clothes. I thought you weren't good enough for my son. But the truth is, Florence, he's a lucky one. You're remarkable. And I was blind and cruel and wrong. Tears streamed down Florence's face. Thank you, she whispered. May I take you to lunch this week? Catherine asked. I'd like to get to know my daughter-in-law properly. After they hung up, Richard held Florence while she cried. Not from pain this time, but from release. 3 days later, the letter arrived in a worn envelope with a Brooklyn return address. Florence opened it carefully, and what she read made her weep again. Dear Mrs. Blackwell, my name is Lisa. I'm 12 years old, and I live in Brooklyn. I saw you on the news. I saw how those rich people treated you, and I saw how you didn't let them break you. I'm like you. I'm poor. I live in a tiny apartment with my mom, and people at school make fun of me because I don't have nice clothes or the new phone. They say I'll never be anything because my mom cleans houses. But after seeing you, I realized something. It doesn't matter what they think. I'm going to learn. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to teach myself languages like you did. And one day, I'm going to prove them all wrong, just like you did. Thank you for showing me that it's possible. Love, Lisa. Florence's hands shook as she read it. This was why last night mattered. Not for revenge or vindication, but for girls like Lisa who needed to see that you don't need permission to be extraordinary. She wrote back immediately. Dear Lisa, you don't need to prove anyone wrong. You just need to prove yourself right. Keep learning. Keep growing. Keep being kind. And one day, you'll look back and realize that the people who made fun of you don't matter, because you were always enough just as you are. And Lisa, if you ever need a book, come visit me at the store. I'll make sure you get one. Love, Florence. 6 months later, the Global Literacy Program launched with libraries in 12 countries. Over 2 million children received books, and every single volume contained a dedication. For the dreamers, for the learners, for the ones who refuse to be small. Keep growing. Victoria Lane lost a position on the boards of 3 major charities after video of her cruelty went viral. She tried to apologize to Florence through intermediaries, but Florence never responded. Some people don't deserve your energy. Gregory Hamilton's reputation never recovered. Word spread through Manhattan's business circles that he had insulted Florence Blackwell, and in a city that respected power above all, attacking Richard's wife was career suicide. He lost contracts worth $200 million. Barbara Hamilton quietly donated $5 million to the literacy program as an anonymous apology. Florence accepted the donation, but never acknowledged the source. 1 year later, Richard and Florence sat in their home library, their favorite room, floor-to-ceiling books, a fireplace, 2 armchairs facing each other. They spent every evening there, reading and talking. Do you ever regret it? Richard asked, marrying me? Dealing with all of this? Florence looked up from her book, Dante's Inferno in the original Italian. Not for a second. Even after everything they put you through? Especially after that, Florence said, because they taught me something important. They taught me that my worth isn't determined by their opinions. It's determined by me, by my choices, by the way I treat people, by the life I build. And I like who I am. Richard smiled. I love who you are. I know, Florence said. That's why we work. They returned to their books, side by side. 2 people from different worlds who had built a new one together. Because at the end of the day, love isn't about money or status or what other people think. It's about finding someone who sees you, really sees you, and chooses you anyway. Florence had been underestimated her entire life, but she never underestimated herself. And that made all the difference. Epilogue. Today, Florence runs the Blackwell Global Literacy Foundation full-time. The program has expanded to 47 countries and serves over 10 million children. She speaks at conferences worldwide, always in a local language, always telling young people that education is a right, not a privilege. Lisa, the girl from Brooklyn, is now studying linguistics at Columbia University on a full scholarship provided by the foundation. She wants to become a translator at the United Nations. Richard's mother, Catherine, became one of Florence's closest friends and the foundation's largest donor. Victoria Lane works in public relations for a mid-sized firm. Her social standing permanently diminished. And sometimes, when Florence gives speeches, she tells the story of that gala night. Not as revenge, but as a reminder. The world will try to put you in a box. It will try to tell you who you are and who you can be based on your bank account, your zip code, your clothes. But you get to decide. You get to write your own story. And if they laugh at you along the way, let them. Because one day, they'll realize they underestimated the wrong person. Florence Blackwell started as a girl from Brooklyn who loved books. She became a woman who changed the world. Not by becoming someone else, but by refusing to be anything less than herself. And that's the most powerful thing any of us can do.
Thank you, Mrs.